What if I told you there's an ETF that lets you ride the S&P 500 up while protecting the first 10% of any drop? It exists, and it has pulled in over $8 billion from nervous investors who want stocks without the full downside. The ticker is BUFR. BUFR is the FT Vest Laddered Buffer ETF run by First Trust. It launched in 2020 and has now grown to roughly $8.5 billion in assets. It sits at the front of one of the hottest categories on Wall Street right now, defined outcome ETFs, which collectively manage more than $70 billion. Here is the basic idea. A buffer ETF gives you exposure to the S&P 500 for 1 year, with two specific outcomes baked in. The fund absorbs the first 10% of any market drop, and your upside is capped at a fixed level set when the fund resets. Think of it as a defined risk and reward window for the next 12 months. But a single buffer fund has a timing problem. If you buy halfway through its 1-year period, you get a watered-down version of the protection. That's where BUFR's twist comes in. Instead of holding one buffer fund, BUFR holds 12 of them, each starting in a different month of the year. So you get a laddered, rolling stream of 1-year buffer cycles no matter when you buy. The pitch is simple. You want stock exposure, but you do not want to lose sleep over a 30% drawdown. BUFR cushions the first 10% of any 1-year decline across its 12 underlying funds. In a year like 2022, that buffer was very valuable. In a roaring bull year, it acted as a brake, but you still made money. But here's the catch. That protection is not free. Each underlying buffer fund caps your upside, often somewhere between 10 and 15% for the year. So when the S&P rips higher by 25%, BUFR is going to leave a chunk of those gains on the table. There's a second catch. The expense ratio on BUFR is 95 basis points. That is high for a passive-feeling product, and it is essentially a layered fee on top of the 12 underlying buffer ETFs. You are paying for the laddered structure and active management of the cycles. Performance-wise, BUFR has done what it was designed to do. Over the last 5 years, it has returned about 9.5% annualized, less than the raw S&P, but with smaller drawdowns. In the worst months, the buffer absorbed a meaningful chunk of the loss, which is exactly what brings investors to the fund in the first place. So who is BUFR actually for? It is for investors who want equity exposure without bearing the full downside, especially anyone within 5 years of retirement, or someone with a low tolerance for sequence of returns risk. It is not a good fit for a long-horizon investor who can stomach drawdowns and wants to capture every cent of upside. The honest reality is this. BUFR trades upside for protection. You will underperform a roaring bull market and outperform a brutal bear market. Whether that swap is worth 95 basis points a year is the real question. If this kind of structured ETF deep dive helps you, hit like and subscribe. And drop a comment with your take. Would you sacrifice some upside for a 10% buffer? Or would you rather just hold plain SPY? I read every reply.